Greetings, fellow citizens of Disneyland. Welcome to the first episode of Old Disney News Tonight. On today's episode, we will be covering the news from the very first week in 1955. That's right, we're covering the news from January 1 to January 9th of 1955, just with a small 70-year delay. Let's jump in on our first big news story. One of the things that we're going to be covering as a theme on this first episode, and in a lot of these episodes, is how different Disney was when they were a mom and pop organization trying to build Disneyland in Anaheim. You'll notice extremely different types of marketing that they go after to try to spread the word that they're building this theme park, because Walt personally had a lot on the line, as well as the corporation. Saturday, January 1st, 1955, Long Beach won the best float in the 1955 Rose Parade, viewed by an estimated 35 million TV viewers. What simpler times? Everybody's just going to watch the Rose Parade because what else is on? However, this would be the very first year that a company called Disneyland would show up in the Rose Parade. The Disneyland float, titled "There's a Good Time Coming," that was quite accurate, nearly lost a tower when a low-hanging palm frond struck the top of the entry. 4 Dumbos whirling on a merry-go-round on the front of the float were undamaged. The rear of the float is Sleeping Beauty's castle, the replica of the proposed 70-foot-high castle to be built at Disneyland, with Mickey Mouse on the head of the float. The Disney entry was publicizing his multi-million-dollar amusement park under construction in Orange County. The intricate Disneyland float won a special award. What is interesting about this is that it was sponsored by Helm's Bakery. Helm's Bakery had these little cute, adorable bakery trucks that would deliver baked goods all around LA. When you go into California Adventure and you go through Buena Vista Street, before you take a right over to Grizzly Flats, you'll see Willie's Churro stand there. Willie's Churro stand is actually a replica of the Helm's Bakery carts. So this is how far the Imagineering team goes to put the Disneyland story inside of Disneyland, going all the way back to the beginning of this year. The float won the special award for exceptional merit in design and color harmony. The float depicts Disneyland Park in Anaheim, which will open in July. It has 7,000 pink roses amongst other flowers. This is where we get into some fun 1955 things that are different than what we know. Listen to this part of the article. No trouble was experienced with the Disneyland entry with Helm's Bakery, but none of the onlookers could talk to Phyllis Yarwood of Newport because of the ruckus the electrical system was causing. The music from the float was so loud that it couldn't allow anybody to speak to Miss Yarwood. She was the queen and maid of California, and her measurements are 32, 22, 35. Why did they have to put the measurements of the woman on the parade float? Whoa, different times. 1955 would mark the 65th Rose Parade, and Pasadena locals hope to see this parade continue. That is absolutely wild. Walt Disney is more popular than ever because the Disneyland TV show is a hit, but they have no idea yet what Disneyland is going to be. Thursday, January 6, 1955, Disneyland becomes officially part of Anaheim. Disneyland is taking shape. Riverbeds and mountains are being born as the Frontierland realm of Disneyland progresses at the 160-acre site near Anaheim. Oh, what a photograph it is. Look at that crystal clear newspaper photograph. Looking southeast, 500 feet above, shows the details of the riverbed with its wooded islands, which will later become water. I believe we're looking at what would become Mark Twain's Island a year later. Wouldn't open until the first anniversary because Walt wanted to add new stuff. But you can see the island taking shape, and the tall trees in the background would be a part of where the stagecoaches would run. The water will become a route for a sternwheeler cruise past American landmarks of historical interest. Walt Disney's multi-million-dollar Wonderland is scheduled for a mid-summer opening. So it's crazy to think that this is how people are seeing Disneyland. It's always being sold on when it's going to open, what exactly they're doing. They were given some information through the TV show, but not everything. Let's jump into this article and see exactly what the annexation meant. The $10 million Disneyland, it would actually end up costing $17. The $10 million Disneyland Fairyland, due to be completed by next July, is now an official part of the city of Anaheim. The state's approval of the annexation ordinance was received late Wednesday afternoon by City Administrator Keith Murdoch. It signed a communication from Secretary of State Jordan officially recognizing Disneyland as an addition to the city. This is a big deal because at the time, Anaheim, Disneyland, they had to figure out like who owns this thing? What is it a part of? Does it get benefits from the city? Can they work together with things in the city? Because as we'll learn later, they don't even have sewer lines. There's no water running out there. Like it is just a dirt patch at this moment. The annexation of the fabulous Wonderland on a 160-acre tract at Harbor and Manchester Boulevard was assured last December 30th in 1954 when the city reached an agreement with the Dyke Water Company and 3 subdivision contractors after an injunction suit was filed. From the beginning of Disneyland, there was always a little bit of a battle between local officials and what they were trying to do. I mean, Walt's plans were so ambitious. It's like, wait a minute, you're building a city inside of our city? People knew what carnivals were, but theme parks don't exist yet. They're like, you're not just going to put a Ferris wheel up. You're building a river. You're building mountains. You're sculpting the land. It had to for sure make some people a little bit nervous as what exactly this guy was doing. What a day to remember. January 6th, the day Disneyland officially became a part of Anaheim. I love it. This would greenlight several other projects, such as starting sewer work. See, they had to kind of figure out things like, well, who's going to help pay for the sewer lines? The J.S. Barrett Company yesterday started work on the $54,000 Cerritos Avenue sewer project in Anaheim. The new trunk line will run from Euclid Avenue to West Street and will serve as the newly annexed Disneyland area. And if you remember, West Street was an intricate part of the Disneyland layout back in the day. So with Disneyland now part of Anaheim, they can start kicking off all these sort of infrastructure projects like $54,000 in sewer lines. What would that cost today? But of course, you got to break a couple eggs to make an omelet. There are lots of stories about things are going sideways at the construction site because it is a massive construction site that is running behind schedule, even though we'll learn from PR articles, they'll never officially tell us that. Saturday, January 8th, fire on the Disneyland property yesterday afternoon severely damaged a pump house and machinery. Forestry Department officials reported this morning, and check it out. Due to the newspaper, we have this sick photo of the fire, which totally clears everything up for us. 3 forestry fire units dispatched from Orange at 1:20 p.m. They were able to save the abandoned residence and garage and chicken coops, but the pump house and contents were destroyed. The pump house was on the north side of Winston Road at the Santa Ana Freeway and Harbor Boulevard. It's in the northeast corner of Disneyland. I'm assuming the pump house was an infrastructure piece Disneyland built, but it says it was an abandoned home. So that means this was one of the few homes that Disney had purchased, and the people had already moved out because they needed to buy individual homes adjacent to the Dominguez orange farm. People say it was one big orange orchard, but that's an oversimplification of the story. And we're going to learn some of those nuances as we pore over the history. They actually had to buy lots of different parcels of land to connect them all together. This is a lot of wheeling and dealing between the city of Anaheim and Disney. I wonder why somebody didn't tell the fire officers, like, you can just let that thing burn. We bought it to destroy it. Let's move on to show you how Disney is trying to get word of mouth out any way they can. And it's actually quite sweet and innocent compared to where the corporation is at today, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do Old Disney News tonight, because it gives us the availability to not look at where the company's at now, but where it once was. Check it out. Disneyland goes to the PTA. Westminster 970-member elementary school, PTA, tomorrow will hear a studio spokesman unfold the story of Disneyland and the future of the children's wonderland being developed in south of Anaheim. It's funny how many people keep calling it a wonderland. Like, that's the only thing that they can kind of equate to what's getting ready to happen. Raul Gresson will talk on the Fairyland spot, now under construction, in a meeting at the Westminster School Auditorium at 2:30 p.m. The public is invited, according to Miss Madeline Hughes, program chairman. So you literally have an executive from Disneyland going to a PTA meeting in Westminster to let them know what they're doing. There's so many of these type of stories of them really getting out there and trying to find different ways to communicate like how they're going to make this thing happen. Do you love stepping back in time to the golden age of Disneyland? Then become a Magic Brick Key holder today and support Old Disney News Tonight and help us keep this charming little program on the air. Channel members get exclusive perks, like being a part of the live recording of Old Disney News Tonight, straight from the old-timey newsroom, as well as the new Hidden Brickies members-only vlog series. So don't delay. Become a Magic Brick Key holder today and make some new Disneyland friends. So here is some wild Disney reporting on the strength of the Disney company. Walt Disney reports gain in sales net. Net profit of Walt Disney Productions and subsidiaries in its fiscal year ended last October 2nd, totaling $733,000, equal to $1.12 a share, which is pretty much what I think you get a share these days, on 632,000 shares, compared with $510,000 or 79 cents a share the previous year, Roy O. Disney, president, reported yesterday. Like, Roy's not a legend. Roy's just the president, and he's actually putting in statistics. He's doing a financial report because that's his job, because he hasn't built Walt Disney World yet. I love how innocent, how mom and pop it is. Gross income for the year amounted to $11.6 million, an increase of over $3.2 million from 1953. Gross film rental income for the past year is not strictly comparable with the years prior. Disney said because of the adoption of the past year of the policy of distributing certain pictures through the firm's wholly owned subsidiary, Buena Vista Film Distribution. $2 million more a year because Buena Vista exists, and they're distributing their own movies, which means more money is staying inside of the corporation, which goes to show the foresight that Walt Disney always had of, like, how can we do as much as possible in-house? Like Main Street USA, where they had tenants on Main Street when they needed the money, but eventually they realized we can make more money with that space. This is the exact same business practice. We need other people to distribute our films because nobody who knows who we are. Now he's won all these Oscars, Disney's a household name, or becoming one, and they go, you know what? We can distribute our own movies. And they did so with $3.2 million more dollars in 1955 dollars. Profitable revenues from character merchandising, publications, music, and non-theatrical film distribution were higher than physical 1953 and continue to be an important profitable part of the business. The company's weekly television program has enjoyed excellent reception from the public and sponsors. Let's pause there for a moment. There is so much great word of mouth that the Disneyland TV show is the most innovative, the most creative, everybody's new favorite TV show. At this point, it's getting ranked in the top 10 of TV shows. It's getting high ratings. What Walt was doing with the Disneyland TV show was blowing people's minds. This particular week that we're covering, the first week of 1955, they're showing Treasure Island in two parts. It's a film already released, but airing on TV for the first time. They're showing one half this week and the other half next week. People are genuinely excited to see this conclusion because if you didn't see it in the theater, there's no home video. He did not anticipate profit from television to be great. The real gain would be in the marketing value of its motion pictures. So basically what he's saying here is that they don't expect that they're going to make a lot of money off the TV show. It's more about promoting the movies. He said that this year they expect to have a strong year where their 1955 releases are Lady and the Tramp, the company's first cartoon in CinemaScope, The African Lion, the third True Life Adventure feature, and The Littlest Outlaw. In no previous year has the company had product for release as strong as scheduled for the coming year. Disneyland said the outlook for 1955 is good. Construction of Disneyland near Anaheim is progressing, with present plans calling for its opening in July, Disney reported. Look how different those financials are, but it shows a lot of core ingenuity that Walt had with the business and being aggressive. I got one more for this week's episode. It's an article about the Walt Disney that nobody knows. There's a couple of little interesting pieces in here that are starting to lay the breadcrumb trail of the legend of Walt Disney, because this is basically like nobody knows Walt Disney, but America's becoming obsessed with him because he's hosting the Disneyland TV show every week. The private life of Walt Disney, one of the world's best known figures, is one of the least known to his public. The genius won 22 Oscars for artistic achievement, has always closely guarded his home life. Although Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and his great creative works are known all over the world, Disney's life apart from the studio has never been wildly publicized. It's crazy because we now know so many details about his life. At this moment in 1955, he's won Oscars, made Snow White, he's made several full-length feature films. People know who he was, but it really goes to show the power of TV. TV made him Uncle Walt. TV brought him into people's lives and made him a megastar. Now that Walt Disney has been seen by millions, I'm getting fan letters. Where does Walt Disney live? Who is his wife? How many children has he? What kind of man is this Disney who made such charming pictures as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Cinderella, Peter Pan, Dumbo, and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea? Let me tell you something about this creative genius. Walt and his wife of 29 years, the former Lillian Bounds, are two of the really happy married people in our town. They have two daughters, Diane, 20, married to Ron Miller, former USC football star, now in the Army. Ron would also run Disney for a while. And Sharon, 18, who is attending University of Arizona. Diane will make Walt a grandfather in February. Is Walt eccentric as the usual creator? He is not. He's a terrific baseball fan. He and his wife have a permanent box, and he roots like the most ardent partisan for the hometown Hollywood Stars, which, by the way, I looked this up. The Hollywood Stars, ironically, had lots of famous people that had invested in this baseball team. Not the Dodgers, the Hollywood Stars. He also has a stockholder's interest. Peanuts, popcorn, and hot dogs are on the Disney menu for the nights they go to the games. The Disneys live in a sprawling estate in Holmby Hills. The house is filled with beautiful antiques Walt and Lillian have bought on their travels. A private railroad skirts the grounds, which Walt takes a never-ending delight in showing his guests. Although his accomplishments are more than any other individuals in Hollywood, he always has time for his family. The nights he does not work, he and Lillian look at motion pictures and TV in their home projection room, which is the last word in detailed perfection. Walt's got a screening room in his house. That's amazing. That's baller for 55. An important spot on the Disney grounds is an antique red barn with all kinds of power and precision instruments. For Walt, not only has a creative mind, he has a great mechanical aptitude, which is rare indeed. In the barn, he indulges in his lifelong creative passion for miniature objects, for little things he uses, apparently, in his cartoons. One of the most delightful pictures Walt ever made was The Living Desert, all about the creatures of the desert. The picture tells of a struggling existence and makes strong a suspense story as if the actors were real live people. His motion pictures are varied in subject. Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea cost him $4.5 million. For this, he went all out, engaging Kirk Douglas, James Mason, Paul Lucas, and Peter Lorre. His Fantasia, a musical, pleased the intelligentsia more than the ordinary person. Walt realizes the great pictures he has made recently are what the public wants. I've known Walt for many years, from the time he won his first Oscar. He was the first to combine cartoons with human beings. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is still one of my favorites, and the proof of its popularity is just last Christmas it was released again to delight to children all over the world. See, there's that moment again of you just can't constantly get your hands on every piece of media. They're re-releasing Snow White, a whole new batch of children that have never been able to see it. Adults alike are going to go back and see it. That's why the box office was so strong back then. One reason I believe that Walt Disney is so wonderful is that he's never entirely grown up. I told him that one time, and he laughed. In spite of his great brain, he understands a child's heart. Disneyland proves that more than anything I know. This amusement park will be a combination of three-dimensional fantasy and legendary fact. Walt will bring down to a small size much of our national history, from frontier times to recent yesterdays, and gives us a look into the future of space travel. A fairyland for children and grown-ups. Yes, this is a great man, a good man. This is Walt Disney. And then they had this beautiful photo they showed in the newspaper that's so blacked out. Friends, I hope you enjoyed the first episode of Old Disneyland News Tonight, where we covered the first week in 1955, looking back on the past of Disneyland so we'll better understand its future, seeing where some of these little pieces of the story come together. Like, this is one of the first mentions of Walt's barn, which is now a famous part of the story. And think about that for a moment. You're so famous that people care about your barn. She slightly mentions the fact that he has a train going around his house, which will become the inspiration for Disneyland that is being built down the road. There are so many little pieces of the Walt story that are told in here, but my favorite, I never knew he was a big-time baseball fan, and I never knew he was a part of the Hollywood Stars. There's so much that we're going to find, so many things we're going to look at when we dig deep into Disneyland's past. Thank you so much for showing up. I appreciate you.